Abby was very young when her mother took her away to live in the city with her uncle, Mr. Peter. That night before traveling to meet Uncle Peter, Abby's mother told her to be obedient and listen to her uncle. He is a good man. Don't be disrespectful. Remember everything I told you and do whatever your uncle tells you, Abby's mother said, as she began to arrange Abby's luggage for the journey. Very early the next morning, Uncle Peter drove into the compound. Abby was already prepared and waiting. She happily took all her bags into the car and sat down excitedly. While the car engine started, Abby's mother looked a little sad. The city was far from the town, making it difficult for her to see her daughter often. Abby, the city is a place of modern life. Be wise and don't forget everything I said to you, Abby's mother said, waving as the car moved out of the compound. Uncle Peter drove quickly to the city. The journey felt like a trip to heaven for Abby. She enjoyed watching all the different things they passed by, things she never had the opportunity to experience in her town. As they drove through the city, Abby saw tall buildings, busy streets, and people from all walks of life. She was amazed by the sights and sounds. Uncle Peter noticed her amazement and smiled. You will get used to city life soon, he said. It's a place of opportunities and challenges. Abby nodded, taking in every word. They finally arrived at Uncle Peter's house in the city. Abby was shocked to see the big mansion her uncle lived in. After taking her luggage inside, Abby was given some snacks to eat while she sat on the couch to watch television. Uncle Peter was a young, successful businessman rich with lots of luxurious properties. He had a wife and 2 children who lived with him in the city of Lagos. However, Uncle Peter's wife was always traveling from one state to another for her business, so she rarely stayed with him. As Abby settled into her new life, she began to notice that her uncle's behavior towards her was changing. He would often find excuses to touch her or make her feel uncomfortable. At first, Abby thought maybe her uncle was just being overly affectionate. But as the incidents continued, Abby realized that something was terribly wrong. She felt trapped and scared, not knowing who to turn to. One day, while staying with her uncle, Abby was in the living room with Uncle Peter's children when she heard her name from a distant room. It was her uncle who screamed her name, so she quickly stood up and went to meet him. Uncle Peter was in his bedroom watching a video on a small television. The video was inappropriate for a young girl like Abby. She rushed into the room and saw her uncle sitting on his bed watching the TV. Uncle Peter noticed that Abby was wearing a very attractive dress. He stared at her for a few seconds and said, "Abby, I want you to get me a glass of water." "Okay, uncle, I will get you the water immediately," Abby said, and went away to fetch the water. After leaving the room, Uncle Peter began to have improper thoughts about his niece. Influenced by the movie he was watching, he rarely saw his wife because she was always traveling, which made him uncomfortable being alone. Abby came back with a glass of water and gave it to Uncle Peter. He collected the water, placed it on the small table near his bed, and locked the door. As a young girl, Abby was confused and didn't understand why her uncle was locking her inside the room. "Abby, I want you to give me something," Uncle Peter said. "Uncle, I don't have anything to give you. I'm just a young girl. What can I give you?" Abby replied, "Yes, you have something to give me. Something my wife hardly does for me," Uncle Peter said while staring at her body. Abby was confused and wanted to know what her uncle was talking about. She thought for a while, but couldn't figure it out. Uncle Peter then put his hands on Abby's shoulder and rubbed it softly. He tried to touch her inappropriately, but Abby quickly removed his hands. "Uncle, Ami told me never to allow anyone to touch me there," Abby said. Her face was covered with fear. Uncle Peter, already determined to take advantage of the situation, said, "Abby, remember your mother told you to do whatever I say, because she knows I won't hurt you. Just let me touch it." Abby thought for a while and remembered her mother's warning to respect Uncle Peter and do whatever he said. She reluctantly allowed her uncle to touch her as he wished. As a young girl, Abby had never experienced what she was facing, so she did not properly understand what her uncle was doing. But Uncle Peter proceeded even further. At this point, She couldn't bear it anymore and told her uncle to stop. But Uncle Peter was greedy and wanted to take things to another level. She tried removing herself from the situation, but she couldn't. She cried and cried, but nobody was there to come for her. Meanwhile, Uncle Peter's children were in the living room watching movies. They had been waiting for Abby to come continue playing and watching the movie together. They never knew that Abby was undergoing something unforgivable from their father. Soon they began to hear her voice. A voice that sounded like she was in trouble. One of Mr. Peter's children decided to check what was happening. As he walked towards Abby's voice, he realized that the cry was coming straight from his father's bedroom. The little boy was wondering what could be happening inside the room, so he went further and held the door. He tried to open the door, but it was locked. Uncle Peter quickly noticed that someone was standing at the door. When he heard the voice, he realized it was his son, Daniel. Uncle Peter opened the door and pretended like nothing was happening. Daniel walked inside anxiously. "Father, what is wrong with our friend? I heard her crying," the little boy asked. "Don't worry, Daniel. Your friend had an accident while she was bringing me a glass of water. She fell and broke her arm, so I was giving her a soft massage on the affected part of her arm," Peter said to his son. Abby knew her uncle was lying, but she couldn't speak out because her uncle told her to remain silent. She was sad and angry. That day was going to be unforgettable for her. That night, Mr. Peter realized that Abby was still sad. So he went to her and told her to clean her tears. "I have done nothing wrong to you. You are almost a woman now. Don't worry, you will soon get used to it," Uncle Peter said. Abby was confused and didn't know what to say. "Uncle, I don't want you to do that to me again. It hurts," Abby said. Uncle Peter smiled and said, "Abby, I'm not hurting you. It's just a game between me and you. Don't worry, next time we will play a different type of game." Then he brought out plenty of snacks and milk and gave them to her as a gift. Abby accepted the snacks, which made her smile a bit. "Abby, your mother will be coming to the city to visit us tomorrow. Make sure you don't tell her anything, or you will hate your uncle for stopping buying you plenty of snacks," said Mr. Peter. "No, Uncle, I want you to buy me plenty more snacks," Abby said to Uncle Peter. Abby was confused and didn't know what to do. She didn't want to disobey her uncle, but she also didn't want him to continue doing what he was doing. As the night went on, Abby couldn't sleep. She was thinking about what had happened and what she should do. She knew she had to tell someone, but who could she trust? The next day, Abby's mother arrived in the city eager to visit her daughter. Abby was excited to see her mother, but she was also nervous about what had happened with her uncle. As they sat down to eat, Abby's mother asked her how she was doing. Abby wanted to tell her mother everything, but she was scared of what might happen. "I'm fine, Mommy," Abby said, trying to hide her true feelings. Her mother looked at her closely, sensing that something was wrong. "Abby, is everything okay?" her mother asked again. Abby hesitated, unsure of what to say. Just then, Uncle Peter walked into the room, smiling and pretending to be a good man. "I left my daughter in your care, and I'm happy you're taking good care of her. May God continue to bless you for taking care of my daughter," Abby's mother said. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. Abby is a very obedient girl. I'll be taking her to a new school when it starts," Mr. Peter said. Abby's mother was happy because her daughter was finally going to resume her education. She couldn't afford to further Abby's education because she had no money. That was one of the reasons she gave her daughter to her brother. Abby's mother stayed with them for 2 weeks. During that period, Mr. Peter wasn't able to carry out his plan with the young girl because her mother was around, and it would have been risky for him to take such action. At the end of the second week, Abby's mother prepared her luggage and decided to go back to her own town. Before leaving, Uncle Peter gave her plenty of food items and other things that would be helpful to her. He also gave her some extra money to take home. He did all that to show he was a good person. Abby's mother was wondering why Uncle Peter suddenly gave her plenty of gifts and money. She accepted them and waved goodbye to Abby before going to the motor park. After Abby's mother traveled back to her town, Mr. Peter was anxious and wanted to make Abby uncomfortable again. While the kids were fast asleep, Abby was busy cleaning the whole house. She heard her uncle call her name. At that moment, she became scared again. She knew her uncle wanted to make her uncomfortable again. As she stood holding the broom, she couldn't run or say no to the call. There was no choice for her. She gently dropped the broom on the floor and began to walk to her uncle's room. As she opened the door, her heart raced. "Abby, I have plenty of snacks for you. Just come and let's play our game, and I'll give you all the snacks," Uncle Peter said to her. "But, Uncle, the game makes me feel uncomfortable," Abby said to him. Uncle Peter continued to convince her, telling her it was just a game. Again, Abby fell for his tricks, but this time, he heard a knock on the door. It wasn't his kids anymore. It was a knock from his wife, who usually traveled around for business. "Darling, it's me. Open the door. I'm back," his wife shouted from afar while approaching the door. She tried opening the door, but it was locked, so she wondered why her husband would suddenly lock himself inside the bedroom. As soon as Abby heard the voice, her face lit up with joy. She felt a surge of hope, knowing that someone had finally arrived to rescue her from her troubled situation. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. What do you think will happen next? Will her wife get to know about his affairs with Abby? Are you interested to know what happens next? If yes, then comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next part of the story. Thank you.